Hello, everyone. My name is David Lee. I'm Professor at SUSS, Chairman of Global FinTech Institute, and the Vice President of Economic Society of Singapore. Today, I'm very glad to participate in this event called Economics in the News, and my special appreciation to Sui Lian from ESS and James from ASEC, as well as ESS for inviting me to share my views on some latest issues. Well, first of all, I start with an economist in the news. There's an economist from Credit Suisse, Zoltan Bozar, and he's published a research called Bretton Woods number 3 that argue that the West-Russia sanctions were an inflection point moment that will push the whole world economy into a new monetary order. You can see from the right, there's the article that he has written on the 7th of March, 2020. There are a few issues that we should look at today. First is that why is there talk about Bretton Woods number 3? Number 2, can the central bank keep increasing their liability in the balance sheet and allow the money supply to grow forever without inflation or without hyperinflation? And third, why is Bitcoin attractive to smaller economies, even though most of the cryptocurrencies are thought to be infeasible as a country reserve? And the fourth is, what are non-fungible token and Metaverse? Finally, the important issue is, will the virtual world grow much faster than the physical economy? First, I would like you to watch this video, and this is the link, and we can start watching it. It's just 10 minutes.
Many people are interpreting recent market moves in the light of Bretton Woods 3. This is an idea about a new world monetary order created by a strategist at Credit Suisse called Zoltan Bozar. So in this video, I'm going to take apart those ideas because I think many people don't understand them. They are very technical. And then I'll also come up with 4 potential consequences of his ideas, which, if correct, could really affect your portfolio, but only if they're true. So now let's look at Bretton Woods 3 in a bit more detail. So beside me here, you can see a picture of Zoltan Bozar, and it seems rather odd because he's saying that central banks might have to bail out commodity traders, which on the face of it is an odd thing to say. But at the end of this video, hopefully that will make sense. But the key thing is he thinks commodities are going to be at the core of our portfolios, but also the monetary system in future. The timeline above me shows you the periods for Bretton Woods 1, 2, and 3. It all kicked off with an agreement between all the major powers of the world in 1944 in this hotel room you can see beneath me. Then that agreement broke down in 1971, and it led to an informal agreement which became known as Bretton Woods 2. And then according to Zoltan, we've got a new era called Bretton Woods 3, which started in March of 2022. So our story starts with Bretton Woods 1. And the idea behind this system was that everything was grounded in the value of the dollar, but the dollar itself was grounded in the value of gold. So 1 ounce of gold was convertible into $35, and then the value of the dollar was fixed relative to all the currencies you can see around me. So this was a fixed exchange rate mechanism. Currencies weren't allowed to float relative to one another. They were fixed and very stable. Another hallmark of the Bretton Woods period was that it was one during which the pound as a reserve currency started to diminish and the dollar took its place. Now, the idea of a reserve currency is that if you as a country export more than you import, then you'll have an excess of foreign currency. Then the question is, which currency should you store that reserve in? And that's what we mean by a reserve currency. Usually it's the currency which is mostly used for trade. So sterling was very widely used for trade up till about 1950, but you can see that the dollar very quickly started to take its place. And that's the world in which we currently find ourselves, one in which the dollar dominates as a reserve currency. The breakdown of the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1971 leads on to the Bretton Woods II period. Now, there was no formal agreement called Bretton Woods II. Instead, you could think of it as the era of fiat currency. Currencies were allowed to float relative to one another, set by market forces, and they weren't fixed relative to the value of gold, say. But what's key to this period is the idea of price stability, and this is the job of a central bank. So the mission statement you can see below is about price stability taken from the ECB website. And what they're talking about is the rate of inflation. And this is the rate at which the overall prices for goods and services change over time, and they're aiming to keep that low, stable, and predictable. Now, as we'll see, that's incredibly important if you want to park your money in that currency. So here I've shown the trading relationship between the US and China during this Bretton Woods II era. Now, this was characterized by the US buying a lot of Chinese goods, which then generated dollars for China. China would then buy US treasuries. Why not? Because they're very safe, they're very stable, and the US Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, will ensure they're not eroded by high US inflation. And China was certainly generating a lot of excess reserves. You can see that they built up to almost $4 trillion in 2014. And although it has fallen since then, it's still well over $3 trillion in reserves. Now, a lot of those are parked in US dollars. Now, I've shown this for the US and China, but for any country which has excess reserves, you can effectively show the same graph, although it doesn't have so many reserves as China, which has the biggest. And according to Zoltan, in 2022, we entered Bretton Woods III. And what triggered this new era for money was when Russia invaded Ukraine. And as a consequence of that, and the very severe sanctions imposed by the West, Russia no longer had access to its foreign exchange reserves. And those foreign exchange reserves were worth about $640 billion, but it could only access 300 billion of them as a result of the sanctions. Now, this actually sets a precedent, according to Zoltan, such that any central bank would now be worried that its assets could be confiscated if they were held in, say, US dollars, if it falls foul of US policy. Now, this has a number of consequences if he's right, which we'll go through now. I think there are 4 of them which are very important. The first consequence is that commodities matter again, just as they did under Bretton Woods I. Now, we're all keyed up to the price of oil at the moment because, of course, Russia exports 11% of the global supply. But it's not just going to be about oil. It'll be about every commodity. And Russia itself exports many other commodities, such as wheat, where it produces 1/5 of the global supply, palladium, where it produces 1/4 of the supply, and fertilizer, where it produces about 23% of the global supply. So Zoltan draws a nice analogy between subprime assets in 2008, which triggered the global financial crisis, and Russian commodities, which he considers to be subprime. And he contrasts that with prime assets, which are non-Russian commodities. And these were kind of like treasuries in 2008. These were the safe haven assets which everybody wanted to protect them from the equity storm. So for example, if we look at the price of oil, it's not the same in every region. So if we look at Urals oil, which is Russian oil, that's trading at a big discount to, say, Brent crude, which is delivered in the North Sea. In fact, the size of that discount is huge and growing. It's currently over $30. So this is a clear example of a subprime commodity. And what he says is that China is going to play a key role in bringing those subprime commodity prices and prime commodity prices back into line with one another. And that's because China has lots of foreign reserves, but it also has no sanctions which it's imposed on Russia. So the world that Zoltan sees is a multipolar world, where we're no longer dominated by US dollar trading, but say, for example, you want to trade with China, you trade in renminbi. And if you want to buy Russian oil, you'd buy it with Russian rubles. So in this new multipolar world, we'd see a weaker dollar and a stronger renminbi. If we look at the largest international holders of US treasuries, China completely dominates. It currently holds over $1 trillion worth of US treasuries, whereas Russia has effectively cut its US treasury holdings to zero. And some people say that that was in preparation for this invasion of Ukraine, because those treasuries, if it doesn't hold them, can't be confiscated. So if China chooses to bring the non-prime commodity prices, that's Russian commodity prices, in line with the prime ones, which are non-Russian commodity prices, then this is one way in which it could do that. It could sell some of its treasuries, and of course that would push up the yields in the US because it would push down prices. The two move in opposite directions. And it could buy the subprime Russian commodities with the dollars that generated. Then it could use some of the dollars to lease vessels. These are the vessels that we'd also use to ship our commodities, so that would push up shipping costs and push up inflation in the West. And it could also use the ships to store some of the commodities if it runs out of space to store them in China. The second approach, which also causes problems in the West, is that the People's Bank of China, the central bank in China, could print renminbi and then use those to buy commodities from Russia. Because they wouldn't have to store any dollars in US treasuries, that would still push up US yields because a big buyer of treasuries would suddenly disappear. And it would still be inflationary because there'd still be a supply squeeze on vessels used to ship goods. Now, under Bretton Woods II, there were lots of dollars generated by trade which had to be stored in foreign bank accounts. So that's called the euro-dollar market. This is nothing to do with euros. These are just dollars stored in non-US bank accounts. And usually those would be stored there in order to settle international transactions. So if instead of that we move to a renminbi-dominated market for people who trade with China, of which there are many, of course, then we'd see a new market. And this would be the euro-renminbi market. And this would signal the end of the dollar hegemony which we've seen under Bretton Woods II, and a gradual rise in the importance of the renminbi as a trading currency. So whichever of those two methods China uses to bring the spread between prime and non-prime commodities into line with one another, it's going to have three consequences. Higher inflation in the West, higher US treasuries, even though they've spiked this year, they'll go even further, and also higher shipping costs, which will also be inflationary. The third consequence is instability, and the trigger for that instability is commodity prices becoming very volatile, surging upwards and then crashing back downwards. We've already seen it to some extent with the margin calls on the London Metals Exchange, in particular for the nickel market. But one consequence of that volatility might be that commodity traders fail to meet those margin requirements and then eventually become bankrupt. Another worry is that central clearing counterparties, which are actually designed to reduce counterparty risk, actually focus that risk, and it might be that clearing houses themselves fail. That would be a systemic problem which would eventually lead to government bailouts. And the fourth consequence would be the end of globalization. This is something that Larry Fink of BlackRock has talked about, but we'd have more resource nationalism, that's something we've already seen, but also stockpiling of commodities, because you don't want to be left shortchanged if there is a supply shock. And then finally, we've seen many countries start to rationalize their supply chains and try to make as many of them as domestic as possible. So I hope you can understand what Zoltan is now saying a little bit better, but also interpret what's going on in markets in terms of Bretton Woods III. I think even if the ideas are wrong, I think probably many of them are, at least they're interesting and help us see the world in a new light. So also, if you're at a dinner party, you can bore your friends with a new world monetary order, which is always a bonus.
Now, you may find some of the answers that I've raised earlier and also some predictions in these two books published in 2015 and 2018. Nevertheless, I shall extract some of the information from there. And first of all, it's on Satoshi Nakamoto, a person or a group of unknown persons that have invented Bitcoin. These are some of the quotations. I'm going to quote a lot of what Satoshi has written before he disappeared. Well, first, he said that banks must be trusted to hold our money and transfer it electronically, but they lend it out in waves of credit bubbles with barely a fraction in reserve. And this is indeed the case now, because the reserve requirement is almost down to 0% at this moment as far as the American Fed is concerned. And also we have to trust them with our privacy, trust them not to let identity thieves drain our accounts. their massive overhead costs make micropayments impossible. Basically, he's saying that not only we have no privacy protection, with a lot of hacker targeting the banks, but also that because of their infrastructure compliance costs and also the silo structure that they have, cost is high, and therefore a lot of people are excluded from the financial system. Now, this slide is about the microeconomics of a decentralized economy and decentralized finance, which we will talk about a little bit more later. And in the second paragraph, it says a lot of people automatically dismiss e-currency, such as Bitcoin, as a lost cause because all the companies that failed since the 1990s, basically, Satoshi says that it is obvious that only the centrally controlled nature of those systems that doom them, which means that if you have a centralized structure, such as a company structure, a legal entity, then it's likely that you'll be closed down. So, and he said that he thinks that this is the first time we are trying a decentralized, non-trust-based system or trusted system that can do peer-to-peer payment. And that's the beginning of the talk about decentralized economy and decentralized finance. And not only the talk about it, but the actual implementation using a software. And of course, the software has got no legal entity. Now, what's the micro foundation of decentralized finance? Well, here there's some hint. Governments are good at cutting off the heads of a centrally controlled network like Napster, which is an internet company in the very early years, but pure peer-to-peer networks like Nutella and Tor seem to be holding their own because government do not really know how to close down a project if it's just purely software. Of course, now governments have some other ways, especially in China, to do so by requiring you to register any software project. And also if you use any cryptography, you will have to be registered. So this quote is perhaps the most powerful concept of Satoshi, that the centralized regulatory system is weakened if there were no legal entity. But there is also confusion over online decentralization and offline decentralization. So in the beginning, when they talk about decentralization, they think that offline and online decentralization, they are the same. But the answer is not, because you can have centralized offline governance, but online, the software can be decentralized. And it's perfectly all right to combine both together. So when there's a physical presence, it is almost impossible to be fully decentralized. That's something that we need to understand, that we try to tokenize or digitize something in the physical world, then somehow or other it will involve geographical location. And once you involve geographical location, there will be jurisdiction and there will be regulation. And therefore, it will be very difficult for anyone or any project to be totally decentralized. Now, Satoshi Nakamoto also talked about organization which is autonomous and decentralized. Well, you perhaps have heard about DAO. DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. They are basically self-regulated by codes with the community as stakeholders. So Bitcoin is an example. It is programmable money, and with DAO, an entity and governed by codes. Here are the 10 notable quotes of Satoshi Nakamoto. Now I'm quoting him because he's a very good economist at heart, besides being a computer scientist, besides being a psychologist, cryptographer, engineers, and so on. It could be a group of people, it could be a person we don't really know, but the first quote is this. It's all about invention, the Bitcoin invention. I have developed a new open source peer-to-peer e-cash system called Bitcoin. It is completely decentralized with no central server or trusted parties, because everything is based on crypto proof instead of trust. There's no intermediaries, there's no trusted third party, there's no legal entity. It's just peer-to-peer exchange of value. And the second code is on peer-to-peer. I've been working on a new electronic cash system that's fully peer-to-peer with no trusted third party. And the third code is on monetary policy. And he said that the root problem with conventional currency is all the trust that is required to make it work. The central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency. But he rightly said that in our history of fiat currency, it is full of breaches of that trust. And the fourth code is on decentralization. A purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. So there's no financial intermediaries. And that is very good if you do not want to be regulated. And it will challenge the regulator and, of course, the policymakers. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but here, as an economist, we need to look at it objectively and look at ways of how we can regulate it. But before we could do that, we need to understand how Satoshi Nakamoto, he or this group of people were thinking about. And fifth, on investment psychology or the fear of missing out, is that it might make sense just to get some of these Bitcoins in case it catches on. So it's a hedge. It's a hedge against a chaotic society, against G0 world where no one is in charge, or against a corrupted world where you don't really trust the government, you don't really trust the military, or you don't really trust the policeman who will never take care of your interest. And the sixth code is on investment incentives. It's about demand and supply, again in economics. Eventually, at most, there are only a supply of 21 million coins for 6.8 billion people in the world. If it really gets huge and people use it as reserve or use it as a store of value, the demand will outstrip the supply. And 7 is on behavioral economics. A rational market price for something that's expected to increase in value will already reflect the present value of the expected future increases. In your head, you do a probability estimate balancing the odds that it keeps increasing. So every dip to him is a buy in a sense. It doesn't matter how many times it crashes, but the next high is higher than the last high, and the current low is higher than the last low. So this is what he's talking about in the behavioral economics. And the 8th code is on consensus and blockchain economics. It is a global distributed database. With addition to the database, by consent of the majority, you need to form consensus and agree that the ledger is the right one. So you then verify and put the latest block into the chain of blocks already existed. And the 9th code is on financial inclusion, and Bitcoin will be convenient for people who don't have a credit card or don't want to use the cards that they have. And the 9th code is on financial inclusion. Bitcoin will be convenient for people who don't have a credit card or don't want to use the card they have. Of course, they must have a handphone and connected by internet. And 10 on crowdsourcing wisdom. It's talk about open source software that anyone can look at the code and audit the code. So it is a lot more resilient because there's better cybersecurity. If it is a bank software that is proprietary, then anyone can change the code. No one will know about it, and when the staff leave, they can actually leave some backdoor for the software. But in the open source, it is open. Anyone can look at the code, and if there's any holes, the whole community will come patch the holes. Well, I think the best quote of Satoshi Nakamoto is this: if you don't believe it or don't get it, it doesn't matter whether you're a Nobel Prize winner or you're spend time to try to convince you and say sorry, each of those. Okay, so I'm going to break you up. These are some of the videos that you can watch if you have time. But I would like you to, in the breakout room, to discuss this. If you are the first name or second name, please facilitate the discussion and also collate your group final comment later I would like you to post it into the chat. So each group should post a comment in the chat when I call for it later. The first, now I would like to invite all of you to give your votes on a group basis. So the group leader, please kindly, after your discussion, give the answer to this question. While you're giving the answer, I will be actually discussing this in the second half. I will give you all this answer directly, but after my sharing of my views, we can come back and relook at this. So I would like all of you now to give your answers to the second question. Okay, is it 1, 2, 3, or 4? Okay. How do government create jobs in the future? What's your best guess? Okay, or the group, please give your answer in the chat. Okay, next one. What are the most used currency in the future? Do you think it's CBDC, central bank digital currency? Do you think it's stable coins? Or do you think it's cryptocurrency? Again, could you give the answer 1, 2, or 3? Okay, next question. Will US dollar be the reserve currency in the future? Is it 1, 2, or 3? So please give your answers. And then we will see, okay, what all of you think about it. Next question. How monetary and fiscal sovereignty will be affected by liquid CBDC, stablecoin, and cryptocurrency? Is it 1, is it 2, or is it 3? So please give your answers now for the group leader. Okay, let's now continue. Okay, you can look at all the results yourself. You have any questions, you can always post it there, and when I see the questions, I will reply to you. Okay. Well, we see that it's in G we trust. Okay, G stands for gold. In pre-Bretton Woods, all currencies are backed by some sort of commodity years back, and of course gold became the most favored. And then we have Bretton Woods 1, that there's the US dollar which is backed by gold, and then we have the Bretton Woods 2nd. Okay, and you can see that the first pre-Bretton Woods is in gold we trust. During Bretton Woods is in God we trust because of the green note and the letters written there. And then post Bretton Woods or Bretton Woods 2 is in government we trust. Okay, since you trust the government, well, sometimes the government will just keep printing and printing and printing. So if they keep printing and there's no inflation, are they right or wrong? Okay, well, whatever it is, when inflation comes, or when there's hyperinflation, for whatever reason, because of war, because it's bad weather, because of shipping costs going up, because there's COVID, and so on, there will come a time that we always talk about liquidity trap, right? You keep printing and printing and printing, the money just keep going to the top half of the pyramid of 1% of the population in the world, then the money is being hoarded there, or the money goes all into speculation or cash on equities and bonds and hedge funds and real estate, and then later maybe into cryptocurrency and NFTs. But the banks are not lending. The banks will want the government to guarantee 90% of the loans before they lend. The banks earn the right to print money, to create money, but they're not willing to land. So central governments are thinking, should we continue to allow the banks to print, or we can just print ourselves? Okay. Well, there were no hyperinflation or inflation because before COVID, profit margin was low. There were excessive supply. There was shrinking demand. You think that the invisible hand was not working, and everybody is asking for distribution economics. Okay, they want the loans to be distributed. They want the consumer credits to be distributed. They want payment channels to lower the cost. They want remittance services to be cheap so that the foreign workers can send the money back to the country. To them, if the percentage of remittance services is down 1%, that's a lot of marginal propensity to consume for the family back home. So everybody is asking for benefits, especially medical, and they want the rich to be taxed. And the government were running out of ideas. Okay, they just keep printing and they were just doing handout. So what's wrong with the invisible hand? Okay, and how do we invoke the visible hand? Well, in 1930s, we had the Keynesian. Okay, because of lack of demand, we increased aggregate demand. In the 1970s, we had the monetarist economy because of the oil shock. We shrink the supply of money. We hike the interest rate. Okay, we drain the liquidity. And then in the 1990s, we talk about classical economics is that leave the market to do what they want to do. And that's called the Greenspan effect. Just leave the government, the market. The market will behave. And of course, the market didn't behave. So in 2020s, while we are all asking for distribution economics or distributism, is there a way to do so? Yes. There will be a virtual hand of the government through the virtual economy, and that's because of technology. Okay. So this is where we come to talk about Web 2.0, which is a bit more on the centralized side, and you are totally decentralized. That's Web 3.0, because it's all have to do with the virtual economy, and that's where the focus is. Okay. Now this is what Vitalik Buterin wrote while he was in Singapore during the whole year during the COVID. He said that economics has historically focused on goods in the form of physical objects, but on the internet, very, very different rules apply, and economics has to change as well to cater for that, because copying is cheap. Okay, on the internet, public goods take center stage. Economics itself seems to be less of a powerful tool in dealing with these issues, because it's less organized, it's bottom up, it's not top down, it's collaboration, it's peer-to-peer. So government are behaving more like market actors and corporates are behaving more like governments. However, in the Web 2.0, in the internet, it is not that decentralized, not that bottom up. They are small centers. And these small centers are corporates. They collect the data, they extract the rent from the smaller guys, the peers. Okay. And they wanted, these are cypherpunks, right? And I'll tell you who they are. They wanted digital nations, but in the end, they got digital nationalism in the sense that, unfortunately, whoever get all the information from the internet, they become very powerful. Now, this is Nick Szabo. Okay, you see Satoshi Nakamoto, well, we don't really know, but we can study his thinking. And I spend a lot of time doing that in a lot of my courses. We do a lot of reading of Nick Szabo's writing. He said that one of the reasons is the nature of the internet makes collecting fees much harder, while subsidy is much easier. Therefore, there must be no barrier to access content on digital record, or you can always download information from the website. There must be ease of use and voluntary, not forced payments. All this must be supported. Okay, that's what he said. So there are groups of people on the internet that is challenging the authority. In 1996, John Perry Barlow has got ideologies that the government of the industrial world, he said, "You weary giants of flesh and steel, I come from cyberspace, the new home of mine. On behalf of the future, I ask you of the past to leave us alone. You are not welcome among us. You have no sovereignty where we gather." And he actually quote the Declaration of Independence in his final paragraph. Okay, and also saying that the Telecoms Act is not very democratic in that sense. And there's another group of people known as cypherpunk. They have the cypherpunk manifesto. Okay, now they say that there's ability, the technology will empower the individual and groups to communicate and interact with each other in a totally anonymous manner. Two persons may exchange messages without even knowing the true name. Not only that, they can exchange value. Anything that exchange value is payment. Okay, and it'll be untraceable. You can implement cryptography protocols, and that will alter completely the nature of the government regulation. Now remember, these people wrote this manifesto back in 1990s, before even Windows come out, right? Or just came out. That's 30 years ago, right? And they almost predicted everything correctly, that privacy protection is the most important, and therefore they are here to write codes to protect privacy. So this is the difference between Web 2 and Web 3. In Web 2, in Web 1, it's just read only on the internet. In Web 2, you can read and write. And Web 3, you not only can read, write, you can own the digital, and the digital is asset. Okay, a digital is an asset class. And that's where economic theory is very weak. The Web 3 is built for the individual, not built for companies. Uses smart contracts, which is decentralized. And of course, uses smart contracts on the blockchain technology. So the economics of Web 3.0 implies there's common prosperity for all, because you own your own assets. There's no intermediaries. And it is a dream world, like what Milton Friedman said. So you can really have an X% growth rule for the monetary policy, or even 0%. Okay, so that everyone can play games to earn, everyone can contribute to the network to earn, everybody can take part to earn, everybody can collaborate to earn, everybody is empowered, even watching and Netflix. Instead of paying Netflix, you earn, and government will go away. Really? No. Okay, the government never go away. It didn't go away. What we see in the COVID is that big government is as powerful as ever, but big business is also as powerful as ever, and they challenge the government, and the government clamped down on the fintech businesses. So, but you can see that the big protest mob is as powerful as ever too. So you can see that, but soon we will see big cryptography that will protect data privacy and therefore retain the individual freedom. So the environment is dense, and different categories and of powerful actors are forced to live quite close side by side with each other. That's what Vitalik observed. And you can see that that's true, because cypherpunk government have civil servants that work on Web 3.0. Okay, so they don't treat each other as enemy as in the early years where cypherpunk one anarchy, there's no government. Now they work closely with the government, and a lot of cypherpunks work in the government. And you can see that in China, even though it's offline is centralized, online they're going for Web 3. They're going for smart contract in their CBDC. It's in their white paper. So you can see that the government are taking advantage of the cypherpunk thinking and moving along. And as Ravi Menon, the managing director of Monetary Authority of Singapore, says, well, it doesn't matter what philosophy you are. Everything we do in fintech, okay, or technology must always have a larger purpose to improve the lives of individuals, to build a more dynamic economy, to promote a more inclusive society. Remember, these words are from a responsible central bank and from a responsible government, like Singapore, like China, like many other countries. But there are a lot of countries that do not have responsible government. Therefore, even you do responsible innovation, it doesn't make any difference. But we are blessed. We are in a country that we as long as we do responsible innovation, we will be favored, and you can always find a good job, and then you will be living in a stable society. Well, this is one of the paper that I wrote for ADB as well. So all the governments started building digital infrastructure, 5G, mesh network, satellite, and they start to digitalize fiat currency as well. Okay, and why do they want to do that? Because it's all about safety and sustainability. You can look at the COVID vaccine supply chain and so on. Everything is going to be on Web3, right? It's on the blockchain. They need to trace the food for food security to make sure that there's recall and to reduce dispute and so on. Everything must be traceable and transparent. And I also wrote a paper for UNDP together with Mr. Aman to look into tokenizing agri and livestock. So now digital currency that we're talking about have CBDC, okay, central bank digital currency, and also we have stable coins, which is authorized by the central bank, and stable coins which are not authorized by the central bank, and also cryptocurrency. So this table will show you what it is, and then the question is, what is money in the future? Okay, well, first of all, when humans see digital things in the 3D, in the physical world,
你把自己妆画的这么丑，可是这支笔倒是挺好看的。
丑？你敢来试试吗？
来的，我不怕。
可以睁眼了，看把你吓的。
怎么什么都没有呢？
现在我能看到的怪，你也看得到。
你到底是什么东西？
我叫柳叶熙。
well, we can also have when humans are present in a 3D virtual world.
My name's Wade Watts. My dad picked that name because it sounded like a superhero's alter ego, like Peter Parker or Bruce Banner. But he died when I was a kid, my mom too. And I ended up here, sitting here in my tiny corner of nowhere. There's nowhere left to go. Nowhere. Except the oasis. A whole virtual universe. People come to the oasis for all the things they can do. But they stay because of all the things they can be.
Can you feel this?
Yeah.
This is another way we can have. Okay, let's digest article by Aaron, which is a very good article that you can explain Metaverse even to your grandparents. So the next 10 slides I've taken from his reading. So the Metaverse is an internet, but also a special game engine-driven collection of virtual environments. And to me, it's a layer. This virtual environment is a layer on top of the physical world. So we have built the physical economy, but we can build another layer on top of this physical economy. That is a virtual environment, either in the physical world or in the virtual world. Well, in the 20th century, when we try to tell the computer what to do, we use the punch card. Okay, this is invented as an interface. Interface meaning how we instruct the computer to do things. We use this punch card when I was much younger in the 20s, 30s. Then when I was when I finished my PhD during a PhD, we started to have DOS, right? This operating system. So you can see this quite often. You use the command.com in your Windows, you will see this. Okay, so and then later we have GUI, graphical user interface. We can just use our mouse, we can use our finger, we just point it or touch it on the screen. We can instruct the computer to do what we want to do. And of course, we have voice instruction as well. And then we have virtual, augmented, mixed, immersive computing or whatever that we can use it to do special. Okay, special meaning in the space that instruct the computer what to do. Now let's look further into the future. Okay, as I mentioned, the interface is how we communicate or interact with the computer. Over time, exchange from PAN card to DOS to GUI to special. The engine to project the whole world into a virtual environment and vice versa. So now we can be in the virtual world, or we can project something in the virtual world that doesn't exist in the physical world to bring them to the physical world. So now it's mixed. Sometimes you don't know whether it's real or not.
One day, you could have superhuman vision. Play your favorite albums in your head and download your brain to a computer or even to another body.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Though this may sound like an episode of your favorite science fiction show, Elon Musk and his team at the neural tech startup Neuralink believe that their electronic brain-computer interfaces could make this possible. Described as Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires.
A Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires.
The small, easy-to-install brain-computer interface could be used to expand the capabilities of humans, changing the way we interact with technology and treat neural and mobility issues. Yet the goals of the company speaks to a potential problem in the future: artificial intelligence. Musk has been very vocal about his fear of artificial intelligence, believing AI could one day overshadow the human race. Musk's inevitable transhumanist goal of augmenting intelligence and abilities may be necessary if we are to compete with advanced artificial intelligence. However, Neuralink's team still has a long way to go before the emergence of AI-human hybrids. The tech company still has a lot of bureaucratic, ethical, and technological hurdles to cross. If Musk's companies accomplish half of what they claim, we could see the emergence of one of the most significant technologies in human history.
Anyway, this year they already do a human trial. Okay, so eventually we have a digital twin. What do I mean by that? Using sensor data to create a software copy of itself inside a computer or vice versa. This lets humans interact with simulated industrial objects as if they are computers. Or let the avatar becomes robot to interact with the physical world. Okay, now let's talk about NFT. What are NFTs? Well, NFTs are internet native property rights. This is non-fungible. Okay, non-fungible tokens means that it's non-fungible in the sense that it's unique, one of its own. It's on the blockchain. Okay, it's on a distributed ledger called blockchain. It's portable. Okay, and it is immutable. You cannot change it. Okay, these are some of the very important characteristics of a non-fungible token. So you know that this painting was sold for 69 million. You can see that it's just few thousand days in some person's life. It's just a digital art in some sense, but it's worth a lot of money. Okay, So from a computer science perspective, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are just digital representations of physical or virtual object. In this case, JPEG file. Okay, the NFT is a token associated with the matter that points at the thing. So you look at the bottom, this is what it is. How can something like that worth 60 over million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, right? Well, NFT may be the infrastructure that powers these virtual economies by facilitating the exchange of information and value, okay, or asset online. So internet allows us to do peer-to-peer information exchange, but NFTs, blockchain allow us to facilitate exchange of value online. That's why if you believe that the physical economy is going to grow single digit, the virtual economy is going to grow triple digit, then whatever you own there will be worth a lot of money. And how do you own them? You own it through NFTs. Okay. So how do we pay each other in the internet or in the new world where we have a layer of virtual economy on top of the physical economy? Why? By exchanging things of value as always, right? So the fastest way is digital. Okay, you can use crypto, digital, tokenized payment system. Okay, you can also do barter, one exchange for the other. There's known as decentralized finance, using a smart contract to exchange one thing with another, all done by computer codes without any middleman. Okay, so this is a question for you. When we are crossing borders, crossing virtual worlds, crossing both the physical and virtual worlds, which type of currency or value exchange is the easiest and most cost efficient? Please give your answer in the chat. Is it 1 fiat? Is it 2 bank accounts? Is it 3 customized e-wallet? Is it 4 non-custodial wallets? Is it 5 CBDCs, central bank digital currency, 6 cryptocurrency, 7 stable coins, or 8 NFTs? Well, you decide. Okay. Well, if you look at the economy and a lot of literature that we have, we still haven't come to the stage where we combine both virtual and physical economy, let alone to build a virtual economy on top of physical economy using digital twin. Right? There is an ecosystem known as Second Life. Okay, the economy is 500 million in size and bigger than some of the real countries, right? And there's also a game called Fortnite, and it doesn't cost you any money to play, but it still earned 9 billion in 2018 and 2019. Because you can buy clothes, buy shoes, and so that's why you see that in the Metaverse, Adidas, Nike, Gucci, all the branded goods, the fashion stores, all the film stars like J.J. Lin, Justin Bieber, then you can see a lot of other very famous singer like Jay Chou and so on. They're into Metaverse. Okay, so most important, because NFT is portable. Well, this shift towards a decentralized way of managing life online. You can move from one game to another. Okay, your assets, your knives, your torch, or whatever that you own is not only confined to one game. You can move it to another game and they still have value. So what else do we need in the future? Like Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, he said that Omniverse, which is basically that we need to go into the virtual world, design and build, and we have a parallel factory that do exactly what we ask them to do in the virtual world. Okay. Now remember, cryptocurrency has got no value when the government is honest, trustable, efficient, benevolent. There's no reason to have cryptocurrency in that world, but not every country are blessed with clean government, not corrupted, benevolent, and efficient. Some countries are just chaotic. They're just like anarchy, right? The government can't get their act together. That's when cryptocurrency thrives. The government is corrupted and the efficiency with little enforcement power. The society is in chaos. Nobody take care of you. It's full of inequality and injustice. The economy is in dire situation, is stagflation and high unemployment. More and more countries will fall into this category. The people are empowered by technology to form their own network and community. And especially the world is in G0, then you will see that cryptocurrency will thrive. So at the end of the day, money is about trust. We talk about in G we trust, and also in C we trust, and also in G plus C we trust. What is C? Well, C is community. You form your own community, you use cryptography, and there are some corporates that will work together and produce the stable coins and so on. Okay, they may be trustable, they may not be, but we are moving to a in G plus C plus C. Okay, C is a community and crypto and okay, either corporate or community. Okay, so at the end of the day, digital money cannot be separated from payment system. When you design a digital currency, you have to talk about payment system. Okay, either centralized or decentralized. You can do peer-to-peer exchange of value. You have to communicate. You must have either a portable identity or private key, because nobody is going to hold it for you. You forget your so-called private key or password, similar to password, then your money is gone forever. Just like money from your wallet, you drop your wallet, it's gone forever, because the private key is the one that opens your wallet, right? So at the end of the day, we don't know whether US dollar is going to be dominant because it's very resilient. Okay, but there's a centralized payment system war out there. Russia and China have their own payment system. In Russia, is known as System for Transfer of Financial Messages. You can sanction them. They will then trade with China to use China cross-border interbank payment system. So we now have two payment systems slowly evolving. Of course, the other new payment system is still in infant stage, and the ECNY is still in experimentation. But don't be surprised that they can grow very fast, because now you don't need a banking license. You can just issue e-wallets to any company that has a lot of customers. Then your money will be used all over the world. Okay, so are digital and cryptos the future of money? Is CBDC, stablecoin, cryptocurrency, NFTs new money? Well, certainly the new money. They are highly social, scalable, and they can create network effect. They are trustless. You don't have to trust the people that you deal with. Okay, there's no intermediary, so there's no trusted third party either. So you don't have to trust the counterparty, but yeah, it's trustable. It's sufficiently decentralized online because it's verified by consensus. Everybody knows that the ledger is correct to the sense. So without trusted third party, it's very low cost. Okay, lowest because you cut away the middleman. It's programmable with smart contracts, interoperable with cross-chain network, multi-chain capabilities. You can cross-chain. Bitcoin can exchange for Ether. Ether can exchange for stable coins, US stable coins. You have standardized codes for your fungible token, like the cryptocurrency, and non-fungible tokens, like all the digital art, tickets, your shoes, your virtual shoes, virtual shirts. There's privacy protection. And the virtual is a layer beyond jurisdiction, government, geographical location, and our Earth. Like Elon Musk is going to Mars, right? China is going to Moon. And of course, monetary and fiscal policy will change. All these policies are programmable now, okay, because it's all conducted by coding. When CBDC is programmable with DeFi, decentralized finance, then monetary and fiscal policy will be programmable. They can have negative interest rate, positive interest rate. They can increase the supply instantaneously. They can shrink the supply instantaneously. They have all the data of what all the consumptions are going to. All activities are collected, and the real GDP will be higher because the shadow economy may be wiped out. People may still want cash, but it's going to be very difficult. Okay. Now, at the end of this session, as I promised earlier on in the materials that we sent out, I hope you understand the history of economic thoughts on the global monetary system. I hope you now understand the possible changes to the global fiat system and the reasons for the rise of the cryptocurrency, stablecoins, and central bank digital currency. And the digital economy and how will the monetary system respond with smart contracts, with policy being programmable. Okay, so all this economic analysis that we'll talk about today is that central banks have been increasing their balance sheet by increasing their liability. The money supply continues to increase at a rate in recent years that the world has not seen before. Of course, we are trying to shrink the supply now, but it's a tall order. In the digital age, the monetary system is dependent on new forms of money and its transmission mechanism. You have a new payment system, e-wallet, and so on. And digital currency and electronic system that a country designs and adopt will redefine monetary economics, and you can respond by having programmable monetary and fiscal policy. This new system will give rise to a convergence of the virtual and physical economy known as the Metaverse, with the digital economy growing at a much faster speed than the physical economy. And in return, the monetary tools will be invented. Okay, new tools will come out and make available by the digitalization of fiat currency. Okay, with that, I end the sharing today, and thank you once again for listening.